Tonight at 6 p.m. Eastern over on Jaguar Gator 8, a new college football video drops. And now, on with our feature presentation. This is quarterback Jason Campbell. I think a lot of people had high hopes for the man after he got drafted by Washington in the first round of the 2005 NFL Draft, especially after a great career at Auburn, where he was named the SEC Offensive Player of the Year in 2004 and was one of the best and most accurate passers in all of college football. However, his career was somewhat of a disappointment, especially when you compare it to the other quarterbacks that got drafted in the first round that year in Alex Smith and Aaron Rodgers. By no means was his career atrocious. He played 9 seasons and threw 87 touchdown passes, but it was a far cry from what a lot of people expected out of him. But of those 87 touchdown passes, there's one that stands out from the rest, because in the history of Washington's franchise, Campbell might hold the distinction of having the craziest touchdown pass of them all. Because I want you to imagine throwing a touchdown pass when you have absolutely no idea what the play is and when you have no idea what the heck you're doing. Well, in a 2006 game against the Carolina Panthers, Campbell somehow did this. Yes, I know I already did a video on a game in the 2000s between Washington and Carolina earlier this week that took place at FedEx Field, and you can find out what happened in that game by clicking the card in the upper right corner. But we're going to go back to that matchup about 5 years later, because the story behind this game is too crazy not to share. This is the story behind the craziest touchdown pass in Washington's franchise history. Before I talk about the actual touchdown pass in question, we need some context to understand how the game was going, and how Campbell's career was going up until this point, because it will truly put into perspective just how insane this play was that I'll show later in the video. It's November 26, 2006, and we have an NFC matchup on our hands at FedEx Field between Washington and Carolina. This is an absolutely critical game for both teams coming off of the Thanksgiving weekend, to the point where with 6 games to play in the season, it might be a must-win for both sides. For Washington, they absolutely have to win this game to keep their playoff hopes alive. After starting the season off with a 2-2 record, they had been in quite the slump, dropping 5 of their next 6 games to fall to 3-7. Fortunately, even despite this bad record, there's still a chance that they can make the postseason for the 2nd straight year. The NFC is extremely mediocre, to the point where when all was said and done, an 8-8 record would be good enough to get into the playoffs. It was looking extremely unlikely, but Washington still had a realistic shot, provided that they run the table. Any loss from this point on, however, especially to Carolina, and they are dead in the water. As for the Carolina Panthers, this is an important game for them as well, as their playoff chances were way more realistic than Washington's at this point. Entering this game, the Panthers were 6-4, tied with the New Orleans Saints for the lead in the NFC South. They were also playing some pretty good football coming off of their bye week, having won 2 straight, and following an 0-2 start, had won 6 of their next 8 games to get to this point. Carolina was one of the hottest teams in football, thanks in part to a suffocating defense that had allowed just 10 points over their previous 2 games, and had allowed the second fewest points in the NFC at 173, only behind the Chicago Bears for the best total in the conference, who were a distant first. The Panthers couldn't afford to let their guard down and let their foot off the gas, as with a bunch of teams at 6-4 or 5-5, any loss would open up the playoff picture. However, as things stood, if the season ended prior to this game, they would be in the playoffs, so a win here against Washington would widen that gap, and maybe help their odds of keeping pace with New Orleans for a chance to win their 3rd division title and their 1st since 2003. But aside from the obvious importance of this game for both teams from a playoff perspective, the storyline heading into this one revolved around this man right here, Jason Campbell. The moment that Campbell got drafted by the team in 2005, the question was obvious. When was the Jason Campbell era going to begin in the nation's capital? Well, it wasn't beginning in 2005, as he didn't play at all, as he rode the pine behind Mark Brunell, who started 15 games, and Patrick Ramsey, who started the other one. And it wasn't beginning over the first half of 2006 either, as Campbell was inactive for the first 9 games of the season, while Brunell was commanding the team under center. But on November 13, 2006, one day after an embarrassing 27-3 loss to the Philadelphia Eagles, head coach Joe Gibbs made the switch. After 25 consecutive games to start off his career where he was inactive, never even so much as throwing a pass or handing the ball off, Jason Campbell was going to get his moment. As Gibbs said on the decision to finally hand the keys over to Campbell, it was a tough decision to make. I talked to Mark Brunell, and I'm sure he does not agree with it. but we'll give Jason his opportunity and see if we can be more productive and see if we can get some answers. Gibbs felt his team's season slipping away, and Brunell wasn't helping matters much with his poor play, as he was 1-4 in his previous 5 starts while completing less than 60% of his passes and throwing just 4 touchdowns. In the most recent game against the Eagles, he threw a pick 6 and finished with just 132 yards passing. It was time for Campbell to show what he could do. And even though he didn't win his first start, which was on the road against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in a 20-17 defeat, Campbell looked alright, throwing 2 touchdown passes and posting a passer rating of 92.3. Now, it was time to make his first home start ever. Little did anyone know what was about to happen when Campbell stepped onto FedEx Field for the first time as a starting quarterback. Because looking for his first win ever, he was about to make one of the craziest touchdown passes, considering the circumstances, in franchise history. It was not smooth sailing for Campbell to start off the game. Remember, this was the second best defense in the conference that he was going up against, and a defense that, since their bye week, had allowed just 5 points per game. On Washington's first 3 drives, they punted and failed to pick up a first down. Campbell had just 6 passing yards on those 3 drives, so he was off to a slow start. They went 3 and out on 4 of their first 5 drives, with the other one ending in a missed field goal. And after Nick Novak hit a 42-yard field goal on drive number 6, Washington followed that up with 3 straight drives ending in punts. Through the first 9 drives of the game, Washington had just 3 points. It was looking like the Panthers were doing to Washington what the Panthers had done to most teams they played so far this season, especially over their most recent 8-game stretch following that 0-2 start. However, fortunately for Campbell and company, they were still right in this game, because Carolina's offense wasn't getting much of anything going either. Through Carolina's first 10 drives of the game, they only managed 2 field goals resulting in 6 points. The Panthers went 3 and out on 6 of those 10 possessions, and on one of them not accounted for, which was the opening drive of the game, they threw an interception on the second play. All Washington needed was 1 touchdown, and they'd be able to take the lead for the first time today and get some momentum going. Sure enough, that's exactly what happened when Campbell hit Antoine Randall for a 4-yard touchdown pass with 2 seconds left in the third quarter. Washington was taking a 10-6 lead heading into the final quarter, needing to hold on and win this game to keep their season alive, as slim as those hopes may have been. The last thing Washington could afford to have happen is, Carolina finally waking up on offense and going on a 15-play drive chewing up clock and going down the field resulting in a touchdown. But after Steve Smith caught an 8-yard touchdown pass from Jake Delhomme, Washington fans had a realization. And that realization was that they just watched their team allow Carolina to wake up on offense and go on a 15-play drive chewing up clock and going down the field resulting in a touchdown. With 8 minutes left, Washington once again found themselves down by 3 points. And with 4.5 minutes to go, after a 2-yard run on first down and an incomplete pass on second down, Washington was facing a 3rd and 8 situation on their own 34-yard line. The importance of getting the first down here cannot be overstated. You don't pick up the 8 yards necessary here, and there's a very real chance, especially since you only have 1 timeout left, since you called one earlier in the quarter and burned another one on a failed challenge, that you're never touching the ball again. The coaching staff called the play into Campbell, with the staff needing him to make the biggest play of his short professional career thus far. And as they were calling the play, disaster struck. Because as Al Saunders was calling the play into Campbell's helmet communication device, the technology crapped out. Now, there is never a good time for technology to completely fail you. You never want the internet to go out when you're trying to send off an email. You never want your phone battery to die when you're making an important call. And you never want your helmet communication device to stop working when you're trying to get a play in. But if there was ever a time for the helmet communication device to stop working, the worst possible time was right here. You could not script it any worse than this. You're dealing with a quarterback in his 2nd ever start, who for all intents and purposes is a rookie quarterback, even though he's in his 2nd season. You're dealing with a 3rd and long situation with 4.5 minutes left in a play that you have to convert, or else the game is practically over. You're doing this against one of the best defenses in the NFL, and a defense that for the most part has shut you out all day. And your entire season is on the line with this one play. Of all the times for the device to stop working, you would be hard-pressed to pick a worse possible time than this one right here. This meant that Jason Campbell was completely on his own, with no knowledge of what the play was, no knowledge of what he was supposed to do, and no knowledge of what the play call was supposed to be. He now had to make everything up on the fly. No pressure. Well, what followed was what might be, considering the circumstances, the craziest touchdown pass in the history of the franchise. Roll the tape.
Campbell in the shotgun on 3rd and 8. Huge play. 4:38 to go. Here comes the blitz. Campbell deep over the middle. Cooley the catch. He's still on his feet to the 40, 35. He could go to the 20, 15, 10, 5. Cooley, touchdown Redskins. Touchdown 66 yards. Jason Campbell to Chris Cooley. And the Redskins take the lead.
That's right. Despite no communication whatsoever, and despite having to make everything up on the fly in his second ever start, Campbell delivered a 66-yard touchdown pass to Chris Cooley for the score to make it 17-13. And Washington would win the game by that final scoreline, keeping whatever slim hopes they had at salvaging their season alive, as thanks to losses by the Giants and obviously the Panthers, the win put them 2 back with 5 to play, which was definitely doable with a little bit of luck. Jason Campbell was the hero. In his first ever home start, he sent the over 91,000 fans at FedEx Field home with a smile, having them feel confident that this was a new era for their team and that he could be their first franchise quarterback in roughly 2 decades. I'm not even sure any of the fans knew what was happening on that touchdown, but after the game, everyone in the press conference was talking about that play. All of the talk was already going to be about the game-winning touchdown, and understandably so, but after the behind-the-scenes magic was revealed, it became even more of a headline in all the best ways, with everyone praising Campbell for his incredible poise, composure, and improvisational skills. Right tackle John Jansen, who was in the huddle when all of this was happening, said, "We could tell that there was something wrong, but he picked up and just took us out there and we ran the play, and it was big." Head coach Joe Gibbs was incredibly impressed by his young quarterback, saying on the play, "I think we could not have asked a whole lot more from his play." He then added on Campbell's composure, "I've never seen him uncomfortable. It's an amazing thing about him. He's got that laid-back personality. And from the day he got here, he's never looked like he was feeling pressure or anything." And wide receiver Santana Moss said pretty bluntly on the play, and Campbell's quick-thinking abilities, "That's what you like. He didn't crack." But that raises the obvious question. How did Campbell know what to do, and what play to call? Well, as Campbell said on his thought process once the communication went out, "I just tried to call one of the plays that we worked on all week that would give us an opportunity to make a first down. Fortunately, God was with me when I made the call, and Chris Cooley did a great job of running after the catch." And to make matters even more impressive, Cooley wasn't even Campbell's first read on the play, nor was he the second read. The first read was to one of the outside receivers, with the second read being to the other. Cooley was only his third read. So not only did Campbell call a play completely out of the blue and completely on his own, but he went through his progressions until he got to his third read and saw Cooley open. This wasn't a case of a player just chucking the ball up and hoping for the best, a la Brett Favre in a 1999 game against the Minnesota Vikings, which you can learn more about by clicking the card in the upper right corner. This was truly making the most of an awful situation, and might be the best instance of composure by a young quarterback that you're ever going to see. Campbell only won 32 games in his career, and Washington would not make the playoffs in 2006, despite those slim hopes after the Carolina game. But in terms of a first win, it doesn't get a whole lot better than this. To have the composure and the state of mind to do this after the technology fails on you abruptly at the worst possible time is truly a remarkable feat. And it's remarkable for anyone, let alone a guy making his second start ever who had to do this with a play clock quickly running out. Jason Campbell easily could have panicked or burned the team's third and final timeout, and I'm not sure how many people would have blamed him. Instead, he remained composed and delivered the game-winning strike. Considering how the 2006 season ended up, and considering the fact that this was somewhat of a meaningless game in hindsight, this play might not seem like much on the surface. But considering everything that it took to get this touchdown pass to work, this might just be the craziest touchdown pass in the over 90-year history of the franchise.
Critical 3rd and 8 for the Redskins. Jason Campbell said the transmitter in his helmet went dead. He had to call his play all by himself. Found Chris Cooley. Cooley found the end zone after a 66-yard run. Redskins go up 17-13.
Get your official Jaguar Gator 9 merchandise by going to jg9shop.com. And be sure to like this video, ring the notification bell, and subscribe down below if you haven't already, as it helps the channel out a lot. And be sure to check out Twitch every Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern for your chance to play NFL Trivia and win cash prizes. Link in the description below. If you want to see videos like this condensed down to 60 seconds, then follow me on TikTok at JaguarGator9. To see college football videos, subscribe to JaguarGator8. To see highlight videos of players throughout the history of the NFL, subscribe to JG9 Highlights. Also, special thanks to all of our Patreon supporters for helping out the channel. Your support is greatly appreciated. See how you can become a patron and request future video topics in the description below.